spoke about how we don't have to pay top dollar or well above everything. You're right. I believe that Wareham was number 12 in the state as one of the, as from the bottom, as the wealthiest communities. We were number 12 the last time I had looked for the entire state. And you're absolutely right.
Per capita or assessed value? Okay.
Per capita, thank you. And unfortunately, previous boards of selectmen, when previous town employees, and this isn't to slam any town employees, but what they were told from department heads was, no one wanted to work here. We had to pay top dollar to get people here. And what we have found out over the past years, yes, there are some that are excellent, qualified employees that we have over there. There are also some that fall short. And you know, every time that we try to make a stand as far as the fiscal management of this town, 2 years ago, we had our finance committee walk out. I have the newspaper articles that this board was concerned that we were overestimating revenues and that we were overestimating them this past fiscal year as well. And I believe that when we voted on it, our concern was that they were being intentionally overinflated so that they could justify spending it. So we have been trying to rein that in. Going back to the education, now that I can go back there, you're right. If we could free up cash in other areas, we may be able to spend more on education. But I think also there needs to be, your group should also look at the education system. I know that with the new superintendent, and I applaud him. I believe that rather than hiring an assistant superintendent, he's hired a financial manager or something, and the pay is considerably less than what the assistant was making before. So he saved probably a teacher position or at least a couple of paraprofessional positions, and he'll actually be getting some accountability financially. I think that that's a step in the right direction, but I think that there are issues with that need to be addressed on the departmental level. The comprehensive community services, senior services, absolutely right. Unfortunately, this building that was built on grants for seniors has been...
You're talking about this building?
This particular building that
you
was
mean
renovated.
Restored?
Renovated, yes, restored, for the senior services. Somehow or other, a few years ago, without town meeting approval, without the Board of Selectmen's approval, the Council on Aging, which is what you were referring to, has morphed into a senior and social services. Not that I have an objection to that, but when we have, for example, the library, which you brought up, does a lot of wonderful services as far as the GED and the assistance programs, helping people informally, but they do a wonderful job over there. Unfortunately, we're using services that are identified as library services over there for these social services, and a department, which is the Council on Aging department, has morphed into the senior and social services, so we're doubling up on services.
Is that a bad thing?
I think it's a bad thing when people don't know where to go, and I think when we don't have the money, I think if people know where to go and to get services, and you're not doing one ad hoc, and one is a codified system, yeah, I do think it's a bad thing.
Well, that's in part the whole idea of promoting a positive community. I listened a couple of weeks back to the arguments made relative to sunsetting a housing partnership. And I was pacing my living room as I listened to the debate, if you will, as to the facts. The facts were not accurate. And if I may, take a moment,
I'm
I'd
sorry,
like to
if
talk
I
a
may
little...
ask, no, I
We're
would say,
not,
first
we're
of all,
not going
this
to talk about the housing partnership.
And I was going to say,
and we
this
only
is-
have 5 more minutes.
Well, you sunsetted an entity based on arguments and/or facts.
Excuse me, let me just
Sure.
just straighten this out. I'm sorry, Mr. Brady. That was an advisory board to this board. We had every right to sunset it if we weren't pleased with the responses from it. That's all I will say on that. As far as curb appeal, absolutely right. And I know that the planning board West Wareham Strategic, zoning rewrite. They were working on identifying, and they did quite an extensive job at identifying and modifying zoning regulations. The strip commercial general, or the strip commercial was changed to commercial general so that there were actually standards. They are working. These things are not overnight issues, but they are working on them and they are working towards them. As far as your complaints with us, I know it's been mentioned, I won't go through all of them. The skyrocketing legal costs, we have talked about that several times. The majority of our legal costs is to defend this town against lawsuits. We have been working, and many of them are land use boards that people are appealing because they want unbuildable lots, essentially, or places that shouldn't be built, or things that shouldn't be built there. They want a battle to build them. And so we're defending the town.
I don't agree that that's the majority of them.
Well, you need to look at the bills.
That's fine. Okay. I'm just telling you that I see them. So, I mean, I believe they are. And we are working with council. They have come in to some of our land use, or they will be coming in, I believe, Mr. Chairman, coming in to exactly go through on when there's a decision, how to write it, what to write, so that it will be substantiated and upheld in the courts. I agree that, I mean, I have kids in the schools. I would love to see more money in the schools, as we addressed earlier. And as far as the library, I would love to see the library funded the way it was. But unfortunately, as you said with your first one, the vision, public safety, and you alluded to it, but I compare it to Maslow's hierarchy of needs for an individual as to for a community. And Maslow says that you have to satisfy food, shelter, safety before you can get into culture and arts. And it's a pyramid type thing. And I cannot, and I think we need to satisfy those. And also, just as a mindset, we don't, as far as the budget, we just approve it. It's the finance committee, it's the town administrator that actually decide where these things are going. But I don't see anything that they've done wrong to get through this crisis. That's all I have to say.
If the library is of
Selectman
that...
Donahue.
Are we all going to get 10 minutes? Is that how this is going to
No,
work?
we're not all getting
Okay.
No, I just
We're
took about
wrapping up.
7,
Your
I'm
10,
sorry.
We're going to try to use our 10, I think. I just
Okay,
want to
6,
sum up
because-
what Selectman Ekstrom just said. If I can put this conversation in context with the larger national political picture at this point in time, sitting here, I feel like a little bit like maybe Barack Obama's campaign feels at the moment in terms of having his message usurped and taken over by the McCain campaign. All of these 7 things, I think that there's nobody in this room would disagree that these are all things that need to be done and all things that are very important to this town. And I think that we are and should be all on the same page for that. So thank you, Mr. Brady, for coming this evening.
Thank you.
Very briefly, with the exception of the personal comments, Mr. Brady, I can't take really any exception with any of these enumerated issues, 90% of which are about money. If the town had more money, virtually every one of these issues that you've raised wouldn't be an issue. We have a money problem for 2 reasons. One is we don't have an economic vision. Money in is just as important as money out. We don't have an economic vision, and we have, quite frankly, had poor fiscal management over the last at least decade. That's when I showed up in this town. And that was the reason that I got involved, was because I thought that we had, and I joined the Finance Committee first, because I thought we had just a poor vision of how we finance our community. So we are cutting to the bone and beyond, and that's why you raise legitimate complaints about certain services that we no longer have, or we're cutting deeply. You're absolutely right. We should have more than a fully funded library and several libraries. We should have a brand new police station. We should have bike paths. We should have land acquisition to preserve our community for open space. We should have all these things. We deserve it. You're absolutely right. Our location is precious. Other communities would be desperate for what we have, but we are wasting our time and wasting our community and our assets slowly because we don't have an economic vision